It's an honor to have the Prime Minister of Italy with us, Prime Minister Meloni, who's doing a fantastic job. I would say that she has taken Europe by storm.
I'm proud of sitting here as Prime Minister of Italy. The goal for me is to make the West great again. I think we can do it together.
We can.
Together we can build a just and lasting peace. We support your efforts, Don.
She's become a friend, and we really have a great relationship between Italy and ourselves.
She was the only European leader at his inauguration. January 2025, Washington, D.C. The most powerful man in the world was sworn in for a second time, and Giorgia Meloni was there, standing in the crowd, smiling for the cameras. The chosen one. Trump called her a fantastic leader. He said she had taken Europe by storm. She was his bridge, his ally, his closest friend in Europe. 14 months later, Italy turned away American military aircraft from a base in Sicily, and the bridge was gone. This is the story of how Giorgia Meloni lost Donald Trump, and what it reveals about the most dangerous calculation in European politics today. To understand what happened, you have to understand what Meloni was building. Since October 2022, she had been constructing something no European leader had managed before, a direct line to Washington. Not through NATO, not through Brussels, not through the traditional channels of European diplomacy, a personal line, to Trump himself. She had cultivated it carefully. She attended his inauguration when other European leaders stayed home. She flew to the White House in April 2025, one of the first European leaders to meet him after his return to power. She positioned herself as the translator between Trump's America and a skeptical Europe. And Trump rewarded her for it. He called her first when he wanted to talk to Europe. He praised her publicly. He said she was beautiful. He said she was his friend. For Meloni, this was not just flattery. It was strategic capital. As long as she was Trump's favourite European, she had something no other leader on the continent had: access. And access meant influence. Then, in early March 2026, the US and Israel launched a military campaign against Iran, and everything Meloni had built began to crack. Italy was not warned in advance. France was warned. Germany was warned. But Italy, Trump's closest European ally, was not in the room when the decision was made. On the day the offensive began, Italy's defence minister, Guido Crosetto, was on holiday in Dubai with his family. He did not know the strikes were coming. He was stranded for days, unable to return to Rome. That detail tells you everything. Because when your closest ally launches a war and doesn't call you, you are not as close as you thought. Meloni had spent 14 months telling Italians she was Trump's bridge to Europe, that she had privileged access to the White House, that her relationship with Trump gave Italy influence that other countries didn't have. In one night, that claim collapsed. Italy had not been warned. Italy had not been consulted. Italy had not been included. And the Italian public was watching. Polls showed that up to 75% of Italians opposed the war in Iran. They were afraid of being drawn into the conflict. They were afraid of rising energy prices. They were afraid of what would happen if Italy was seen as complicit in a war they had not chosen. The political pressure on Meloni was enormous, and on March 11, 2026, she made her move. Standing in the Italian Senate, she delivered a speech that European newspapers immediately called a break with Trump. She said the US-Israeli strikes were outside the scope of international law. She condemned the killing of civilians. She said Italy would not participate in the intervention. The headlines wrote themselves. Meloni turns against Trump. Trump humiliated. His closest ally slams his deadly war. But here is what the headlines missed. Because Meloni was not condemning the war. She was threading a needle. She said the strikes were outside international law, but she did not say they were illegal. She condemned the killing of civilians, but she did not point the finger at America. She said Italy would not participate, but she did not close the American bases. She was trying to say just enough to satisfy an Italian public that overwhelmingly opposed the war, without saying so much that Trump would turn on her. It was the most difficult balancing act of her political career. And it was made harder by the fact that days later, Italy's military turned away American aircraft from the Sigonella base in Sicily. US planes heading toward the Middle East were denied a stopover. The Italian defense chief personally informed the US military of the decision. Meloni's office issued a statement. Relations with the US are solid. There is no crisis. There are no frictions. But American aircraft had just been turned away from Italian soil, and Trump noticed. He had spent weeks blasting European allies who refused to support the Iran campaign. He said the US wouldn't be there to help them anymore. He threatened NATO obligations. He said Europe had abandoned America. He named France. He named Spain. But not Meloni. Not yet. And that silence, that careful, deliberate silence, tells you that something between them is still alive. But something has changed. Because here is what this moment actually revealed. Meloni's relationship with Trump was always built on politics, not on policy. They shared an opposition to immigration. They shared a skepticism of globalism. They shared a certain style of nationalist politics. But on the actual decisions that matter, on tariffs, on Ukraine, on Iran, their interests have never fully aligned. Italy needs the European Union. Italy needs transatlantic stability. Italy needs energy prices to stay low. Trump's war in Iran was pushing energy prices up across Europe. Italian voters were paying more at the pump because of a war their prime minister's closest ally had started. And Meloni had to choose. Stand with Trump and lose Italy, or step back from Trump and survive. She chose survival. But survival has a cost. Because the thing that made Meloni uniquely powerful in European politics was her access to Trump. Without that access, she is just another right-wing European leader trying to navigate a continent in crisis. The referendum defeat had already cracked her image at home. Now the Iran war had cracked her image abroad. The woman who was supposed to be the bridge between Washington and Brussels had been left off the invitation list when the war began. And the bridge, it turns out, only works in one direction. We are watching. Because the next call Trump makes to Europe, and whether Meloni is on the other end of that line, will tell us whether this rupture is real, or just another balancing act from the woman who has survived everything so far. Subscribe to the Record Room, because the files that come next will determine whether Meloni's greatest diplomatic asset is gone or just temporarily misplaced. But let's go back to the inauguration. January 2025, Washington, D.C. Meloni was there, the only European leader. Other leaders sent congratulations. She sent herself. That choice was deliberate. It was a signal to the world, and to Trump. I am not like them. I am with you. And for 14 months, that signal paid dividends. But here is the irony that nobody in Brussels is willing to say out loud. The leaders who stayed home in January 2025, Macron, Scholz, the rest, they were not excluded from the Iran briefings. France was warned. Germany was warned. The leaders who maintained their distance from Trump, who refused to give him the symbolic endorsement of their presence, were treated as strategic partners when the real decisions were made. And Meloni, who gave Trump everything he asked for symbolically, was left out. Because Trump does not reward loyalty, he rewards leverage. And Meloni, in her rush to be his favourite European, had given away her leverage without receiving anything in return. That is the lesson the Iran war has taught Italian foreign policy. And it is a lesson that Meloni, alone in a continent that is rapidly turning against Washington, will have to carry into 2027, when Italy votes again. And when the question on every ballot paper will be the same one that the Iran war has already answered. Whose side is she on?